The marriage pact between Sophie Miller and me was the stuff of fairy tales in New York City. The Sinclair family had been her patrons, and I had been her guardian angel for 20 years. Tonight was supposed to be our engagement party. Instead, she ran out on me for another man. When I finally got her on the phone, she was sobbing hysterically. Ethan, it's Caleb. He needs a transfusion. Type A negative. Please, you have to save him. I gripped my phone, the murmurs of a ballroom full of guests buzzing behind me as a line of blood-red text scrolled across my vision. Here we go. The ultimate blood donor makes his grand entrance. The moment he gives 800 cubic centimeters, his fiancée is going to kiss the other guy right in front of him. Then the other guy will turn around and report his family for tax fraud. His dad will have a stroke, and he'll end up selling a kidney for cash. In the end, she'll take the money and tell him, crying, Ethan, we'll always be best friends. I laughed, a tremor running through my body. Friends, a walking blood bank, a kidney. To hell with that, I'm done. The marriage pact between me and Sophie Miller was the stuff of legend in New York City society. The Sinclairs were her benefactors. I was her protector for 2 decades. Our union was built as a match made in heaven. Tonight, the Sinclair Grand Ballroom was filled to capacity for our engagement party, and I, the man of the hour, was standing here like a complete joke because my fiancée had just bolted. A second before we were supposed to exchange rings, she hiked up her $1 million custom gown and sprinted out of the ballroom. My phone buzzed violently. The caller ID read, Sophie. I answered to the sound of her voice torn apart by sobs. Ethan, get to Metropolitan General now. It's Caleb. Something happened to him. Caleb Vance, the man she truly loved. My nemesis. He got into a fight over some girl and lost a lot of blood. You need the transfusion now. The doctor said the blood bank is out of a negative. Ethan, that's your blood type. I'm begging you, please come save him. I squeezed the phone, my knuckles turning white. Behind me, the guests were whispering. What is wrong with that Miller girl running out of her own engagement party and calling her fiancé to ask him to save another man? I always heard she had something going on with that Vance kid. I guess this makes it official. Poor Ethan. In front of my eyes, lines of crimson text refreshed frantically. It's happening. The blood donor of the century is about to rush over there. Get ready for the classic scene. He's barely finished giving 800 cubic centimeters of blood before Sophie gets so emotional, she kisses Caleb Vance the moment he wakes up right in front of our guy. It gets better. The first thing Caleb does when he recovers is team up with outsiders to report the Sinclairs for tax evasion, bankrupting Ethan's family overnight. In the end, Ethan's dad has a stroke from the stress, and he has to sell a kidney on the black market to raise money, only for Sophie to tell him we'll always be best friends. Hilarious. I stood rooted to the spot, the blood turning to ice in my veins. So that's what I was, the beautiful, pathetic second male lead in a trashy billionaire romance novel. My devotion, my sacrifices, they were nothing but a pathetic and laughable stepping stone for the main character's love story. To lose my family's fortune, my health, and half my life for her. Why the hell should I? On the other end of the line, Sophie was still screaming. Ethan, did you hear me? This is life or death. What are you waiting for? You're right, I said, my voice dangerously calm. It is life or death. I hung up the phone, watched by a shocked audience. I walked onto the stage and picked up the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice amplified by the speakers, carried to every corner of the ballroom. My apologies, but there appears to have been a slight change of plans this evening. My fiancée, Miss Sophie Miller, has just rushed to the hospital. It seems the love of her life, Mr. Caleb Vance, was injured in a brawl over another woman and is in dire need of my blood. As her best friend of 20 years and her fiancé in name only, I paused, scanning the sea of fascinating expressions below, and smiled. I should give them my blessing. As of this moment, I, Ethan Sinclair, am officially breaking my engagement to Miss Sophie Miller. I wish them well. A and a bastard. May they last forever. With that, I dropped the microphone hard onto the stage floor and turned to leave. Behind me there was a moment of dead silence, followed by a tidal wave of pandemonium. I had just stepped out of the ballroom when my mother's call came through. Her voice was shrill with fury. Ethan, have you lost your mind? What was that nonsense you were spouting on stage? Do you have any idea how this makes our family look? How it makes the Millers look? It was nonsense. I opened my car door and slid in, my tone glacial. I was simply making the facts public. What facts? Sophie is just a kind soul who got confused. She and Caleb Vance are just friends. After all these years, don't you trust her? The word kind made me laugh out loud. Mom, your good girl ran out of our engagement party for another man. Your good girl called me to go donate blood to the man she loves who is in the hospital. Your good girl took the Sinclair family's reputation and our 20 years of history and grounded it into the dirt to please someone else. If that's what you call kind, then it's a kindness I can't afford. I'm telling you, the engagement is off and no one could change my mind. The line went silent. After a long moment, my mother's voice returned, weary. Ethan, the Millers, they saved us. There was, again, 20 years ago, my father's company was on the verge of collapse when his credit line was cut. It was Sophie's father, a small-time contractor back then, who gave us his life savings to help us survive the crisis. That debt of gratitude had become the shackles of my life. They helped us. So I have to marry a woman who doesn't love me and spend the rest of my life as her backup plan and personal blood bank? Mom, there are many ways to repay a debt. Sacrificing my entire life isn't one of them. The Sinclairs will pay back what we owe the Millers. Starting today, I will wire $1 million to their account every month until the principal and interest from that original loan are paid in full. After that, we owe them nothing. I hung up and started the car. My phone rang again, an unknown number. I answered to a sultry female voice. Mr. Sinclair. It's been a while. It was Maya Rhodes, the other woman in Caleb Vance's fight, a master-class manipulator. The text in my vision instantly exploded. Here she is. The pro-level player has entered the game. Caleb is not doing well. Sophie's at the hospital crying her eyes out. It's just heartbreaking to see, she said, her voice laced with malicious glee. But I suppose this is all my fault. If I weren't so charming, Caleb wouldn't have gotten into a fight over me. Mr. Sinclair, as Sophie's fiancé, you're not upset with me, are you? A brilliant move, a faint apology that was really a boast, while simultaneously poisoning my relationship with Sophie. Upset with you? I laughed. No, I should be thanking you. Maya was taken aback. Thanking me? That's right. Thank you. I glanced at my own cold eyes in the rearview mirror. Thank you for showing me what kind of trash I was surrounded by. And thank you for giving me the chance to take it all out in one go. Beep, beep, beep. I hung up, having no interest in the rest of her games. I pulled up my phone and dialed my assistant. Leo, I need you to do 3 things for me. First, issue a statement to every media outlet in the city in my name. The content is, I, Ethan Sinclair, have unilaterally broken my engagement to Sophie Miller. From this day forward, our lives are our own. Second, I want every piece of information you can find on the Vance Corporation's bid for the West Side redevelopment project. I want the most detailed file possible. Third, I watch the city lights streak past the window. Give me a meeting with a fixer they call Viper. Tell him I have a big deal I want to discuss. The next day, the announcement of my broken engagement was the headline on every business and gossip page in the city. Sinclair and Miller affiliated stocks tumbled. My father stormed into my office and threw a newspaper at my face. You damn fool! Look at what you've done! I calmly picked up the paper and glanced at the front page photo of me and Sophie, now split by a jagged line. Dad, do you really think marrying a woman who would run out on me for another man at a moment's notice is a good thing? You could have handled it privately. Why did you have to make it a public spectacle? The company's stock is plummeting. Are you happy now? Not yet, I shook my head. This is just the beginning. I had my mother come to the office as well. In front of both of them, I played a recording. It was my phone call with Sophie from the night before. Her frantic sobs and my calm questions created a stark contrast. Ethan, that's your blood type. I'm begging you. Please come save him. This is a life or death. What are you waiting for? When the recording finished, the office was deathly silent. The expressions on my parents' faces were grim. Now, do you still think she's that kind, innocent girl? I asked coldly. She sees me as nothing more than a tool to be used at her convenience. A walking blood bank she can tap anytime. Dad, Mom. For years, the Sinclair family has done more than enough for the Millers. We paid for her to attend the best schools, bought her luxury goods, and let her live like a princess. We don't owe her anything anymore. I will not go through with this marriage. If you try to force me, then someone else can have the CEO chair. I slapped my letter of resignation on the desk. It was the first time I had ever defied them with such force. My father stared at me, his lips trembling. Finally, he slumped back onto the sofa, speechless. My mother, her eyes red, looked from me to the resignation letter and sighed. Fine, do what you want. I knew I had won. They might not care about my feelings, but they couldn't be careless about the future of the Sinclair Corporation. With the family obstacle removed, I immediately set my plan in motion. That afternoon, I met Viper. He was a man who thrived in the city's gray areas with connections everywhere. Mr. Sinclair, to what do I owe the pleasure? He asked with a greasy smile. I pushed an envelope across the table. That's a $50,000 retainer. I need you to do something for me. Caleb Vance, a negative blood type, should still be in a VIP room at Metropolitan General. I need you to find a few people with the same blood type, but who are carrying a little something extra, say HIV or syphilis, and I want them to go to the hospital to eagerly donate blood. Make sure their blood makes it into Caleb Vance's body. Viper's eyes lit up. Mr. Sinclair, that's a vicious move. When it's done, the remaining $450,000 will be wired to your account. Consider it done. Viper slapped his chest. I'll handle it personally. After Viper left, my assistant Leo knocked and entered. Mr. Sinclair, the files you requested. He placed a thick binder on my desk detailing the Vance Corporation's bid for the West Side project. I opened it, a smile spreading across my face as I saw their confident, all-in offer to secure this land. The Vance Corporation had mortgaged most of the company's liquid assets and taken out massive short-term bank loans. They believed this project was the cornerstone of their next decade of growth. They had no idea it would be the first stone to crush them. I dialed the private number of Commissioner Thompson at the City Planning Department. Commissioner, it's Ethan Sinclair. Ethan, my boy, congratulations on the engagement. Commissioner Thompson on the other end had clearly just seen the news, and his words trailed off awkwardly. Let's skip the pleasantries, sir, I said, getting straight to the point. The West Side project. I know you put a lot of work into it. I have some information that might interest you. Oh, I'm listening. My sources tell me that the environmental impact report Vance Corp submitted with their bid was fraudulent. That land is severely contaminated with heavy metals. It's completely unsuitable for commercial development. The other end of the line went silent. Ethan, that's not something to joke about. The commissioner's voice turned serious. You can find out if it's a joke by sending a team to take some core samples, I said with certainty. If my information is correct, I hope you'll reconsider the final recipient of that contract. Sinclair Corp is willing to take that mess off your hands for 5% above Vance's bid, and we will assume full responsibility for the subsequent cleanup. I hung up the phone. Caleb Vance, you love playing the hero for women, don't you? I hope you still got that same energy when you're lying in a hospital bed and get the news that your family's company is about to go bankrupt. 3 days later, 2 bombshells rocked New York's business world. First, the winner of the West Side redevelopment bid was announced. It wasn't the favorite, Vance Corp, but Sinclair Corp. The official reason? The Vance Corporation's environmental report was found to contain falsified data. The company was blacklisted from all government contracts for the next 3 years. Second, a major medical scandal erupted at Metropolitan General Hospital. Paid blood donors had faked their health screenings, resulting in several patients in urgent need of transfusions being infected with HIV. The most high-profile victim was the heir to the Vance Corporation, Kayla Vance. The moment the news broke, Vance Corp's stock hit limit down for 3 consecutive days. It was a bloodbath, wiping out nearly $10 billion in market value. Banks began calling in their loans. Partners terminated their contracts. Suppliers picketed the Vance Tower, demanding payment. The Vance empire was on the verge of collapse, I sat in my office sipping coffee and watching the brutal green line of Vance Corp's stock performance with immense satisfaction. The text scrolled across my vision. High ST double kill. This is savage. Biological castration and a corporate execution. He's not just killing him, he's destroying his soul. This is more villainous than the actual villain. Why, yes, so satisfying. Let that idiot Caleb Vance get a taste of what it's like to fall from the top of the world into the gutter. My office door was thrown open. Sophie burst in. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale, her hair a mess. The picture of elegance she once was had vanished. "Ethan," she screamed, "this was you, wasn't it? What happened to Caleb? To his family? You did this, didn't you?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at her, perfectly composed. "Yes, it was me. What about it?" Sophie swayed as if the blow was too much to bear. "What?" Tears streamed down her face. "Happy to be so cruel? After everything we've been through, don't our years together mean anything to you? Caleb is already suffering so much. He just made a mistake any man would make. Why would you do this to him?" "A mistake any man would make." I laughed as if it were the funniest joke I'd ever heard. I stood up and walked toward her step by step. "Sophie, when you ran out on our engagement for him, did you think about our years together then? When you begged me to give him my blood, did you think about our years together? In your eyes, his mistakes are forgivable, but the humiliation I suffered is supposed to be forgotten. Your double standards are truly breathtaking. My words are like knives." She was speechless, able to do nothing but cry and shake her head. "No, it's not like that. I didn't want anything to happen to him. You didn't want anything to happen to him, so it should have happened to me instead. You love him, so I'm supposed to sacrifice everything for your love story." "Sophie, save your ridiculous logic." I took a check from my drawer, wrote it out for $10 million, and threw it in front of her. "This is the last handout you'll ever get from the Sinclair family. Take the money and go treat your precious lover's dirty disease. From now on, you and the Miller family have nothing to do with us." Sophie stared at the check on the floor, then at my resolute face, and finally broke down. She fell to her knees, grabbed my leg, and wailed, "Ethan, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please forgive me. Let's go back to how things were. Please, I'm begging you. Spare Caleb. Spare his family. I'll do anything you want. Anything." She cried as if her heart was breaking. The text in my vision was full of scorn, a little too late for regrets. I looked down at her, my expression empty. "Anything." I took out my phone and started a new recording. "Fine. Right now, I want you to go down to the Vance Tower in front of all the debt collectors and reporters. I want you to shout it from the rooftops. Tell them Caleb Vance is a pathetic waste of life who has AIDS. Tell them that you, Sophie Miller, betrayed your fiancé for that piece of trash. Then I want you to get on your knees and bark 3 times like a dog. Do that and I'll consider letting the Vance family off the hook." Sophie, sobbing, stopped cold. She looked up at me in disbelief as if staring at a monster. "Ethan, you? How could you humiliate me like that? Humiliate you?" I kicked her hand away, then crouched down, grabbing her chin and forcing her to look me in the eye. "Sophie, isn't this what you wanted? You've already thrown away your dignity for him. What's one more public disgrace? Go on, go prove to the world how great your love is. Either that or just sit back and watch him and his entire family go to hell together." I let go of her and stood up, smoothing the lapels of my suit as if I had just touched something filthy. "The choice is yours." In the end, Sophie didn't go. She left my office in a daze, like a puppet with its strings cut. I didn't bother to follow up on her. A much bigger fish was on the line. Caleb Vance's father, Donovan Vance, a ruthless old fox of the business world, requested a meeting. The venue was a private, members-only suite at the Corelli. He was already there when I arrived. In just a few days, he seemed to have aged a decade. His temples were gray, but his eyes were still sharp as a hawk. "Ethan, thank you for coming," he said, pouring me a cup of tea himself, his posture deliberately humble. "Donovan, please," I said, picking up the cup but not drinking. "My son was a fool and offended you. That's a failure on my part as a father," Donovan began, getting straight to the point. "I'm here to apologize on his behalf. I've come today to ask for a truce. He took a file from his briefcase and pushed it across the table. This is a stock transfer agreement for 15% of the Vance Corporation. If you'll just show some mercy and let Vance Corp off the hook, consider this my apology. 15% of the company, based on its pre-crash valuation, was worth over $3 billion. It was a staggering offer. The text in my vision was shocked. Damn, the old fox is willing to cut off a limb to survive. $3 billion? Take it, Ethan. That's way more than you'd make by slowly bankrupting them. I smiled and pushed the file back. Donovan, do you really think I need your $3 billion? Donovan's expression darkened. Ethan, you should always leave yourself an out. Destroy me today and you'll have to worry about the day the Vance family rises again to repay you in kind? I laughed. Donovan, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. I stood up, walked over to him, and leaned in close. You think all I want is to ruin Vance Corp? No, I want the whole thing. I want you to watch as the empire you spent your life building is renamed Sinclair. And I want that precious son of yours to spend the rest of his life groveling at my feet like a dog. As for rising again, I straightened up, looking down at his face, twisted with rage and shock, and smiled. I will personally guarantee that the Vance family never gets that chance. Donovan shot to his feet, pointing at me, his body trembling with fury. You're a madman. I'll take that as a compliment. I turned to leave. Ethan, Donovan roared behind me, don't get too comfortable. You think Donovan Vance is a pushover? I still have one ace up my sleeve. I stopped and turned back, looking at him with genuine interest. Oh, do tell. A cruel smile spread across Donovan's face. I'm guessing you don't know. 20 years ago, when your father's company was on the brink of collapse, I was the one who guaranteed his bank loan. And in that guarantee agreement, there was a special clause. If Sinclair Corp was unable to repay the loan on schedule, I, Donovan Vance, would have the right to acquire a 51% stake in Sinclair Corp for the price of $1. My eyes widened. The text exploded. A plot twist. The old fox had this hidden the whole time. He overplayed his hand. The protagonist just got checkmated. Donovan laughed triumphantly. That loan's final maturity date is this coming Monday. And from what I hear, because you broke the engagement and threw the market into chaos, your bank has decided to call on the loan early. Ethan, you have two choices. Either watch your father's company go bankrupt and fall into my hands, or get on your knees and beg me. He stared at me, his eyes filled with the thrill of revenge. Now you tell me, who's on their knees? The suite was silent. I looked at his victorious face and held the silence for a full minute. Then I laughed. I pulled out my phone, opened a file, and slid it across the table to him. It was a letter of credit from UBS in Switzerland. I've already secured a low-interest line of credit from overseas using Sinclair's prime assets as collateral. Forget next Monday. I could pay back your partner bank in full right now. Sweat beaded on Donovan's forehead, but he blustered. So what if you can repay the loan? You can't destroy me, can you? I hit play on my phone. Our entire conversation played back crystal clear, including his admission that he came to ask for a truce and his final threatening ace in the sleeve speech. The color drained from Donovan's face. You recorded me, Donovan? In this business, you always need an insurance policy, don't you? I held up the phone, a smirk playing on my lips. Tell me, what do you think will happen if I send this recording along with a copy of that predatory guarantee agreement to the press and the SEC? What will they say about the esteemed entrepreneur Donovan Vance, a scheming villain who preys on his partners in their moment of weakness, setting traps for a hostile takeover? Do you think they'll continue to support you, or will they band together to force you out? No one will do business with Vance Corp. The banks will pull your credit lines. Suppliers will demand cash on delivery. Your empire will turn to dust overnight. Donovan collapsed into his chair as if all the strength had been drained from his body. In the end, Donovan Vance signed a 15% stock transfer agreement. I became the largest individual shareholder in the Vance Corporation outside of the Vance family itself. But that wasn't enough. Right in front of him, I called my assistant and put the phone on speaker. Leo, get this done. First, contact all our media partners. I want the news about Vance Corp's fraudulent environmental report. their scam to win the government project, and Caleb Vance's HIV infection at the top of every news cycle. 24-hour rotation. I want everyone in the city to know. Second, put together a dedicated team with a $5 billion war chest. Starting today, I want them to short Vance Corp stock on the open market. Price is no object. Third, I want you to liquidate all of my personal holdings in any Vance-affiliated companies. Create a panic. Start a stampede for the exits. With every order I gave, Donovan's face grew another shade paler. By the time I was finished, he looked like a ghost. "Ethan," he screamed with all his might, "you've already won. Why do you have to be so merciless?" "Merciless?" I hung up and looked at him with a cold smile. "Donovan, when you set that trap with the loan guarantee, planning to swallow my family whole, was that not merciless? When your son was lying in his hospital bed plotting how to get my father arrested, was that not merciless? I'm just returning the favor." "You," Donovan pointed at me, then choked, spitting a mouthful of blood before collapsing to the floor. I watched unmoved as the paramedics carried him away. He got what he deserved. The following days were a whirlwind for the city's business community. Under my direction, negative press about the Vance Corporation was everywhere. Venerable firm exposed as data fraud. His debauched lifestyle leads to AIDS diagnosis. Vance Corp embroiled in commercial fraud scandal. Chairman suffers stroke from shock. Each headline was more sensational than the last. Vance Corp stock wasn't just cut in half. It was practically amputated at the ankles. Countless investors protested outside Vance Tower, demanding their money back. All of the Vance family's assets, mansions, luxury cars, and art collections were frozen and seized by furious creditors. Caleb Vance and his mother were kicked out of their family estate. Overnight, the society queen and her princeling son became homeless. I saw them again on a rainy night. I was driving past a block of cheap apartment buildings when I saw two familiar figures being thrown out onto the sidewalk by a landlord. Their luggage was tossed out after them like trash. It was Caleb and his mother, Diana. The once immaculate Diana Vance, who used to look down her nose at me, was now scrabbling on the wet pavement, gathering their scattered belongings and begging the landlord for a few more days. And Caleb, the once arrogant heir, was huddled against a wall, his head in his hands, completely deaf to his mother's pleas, like a hollowed-out shell of a man. The relentless series of blows had shattered him. I rolled down my window and watched the scene unfold. The rain soaked their hair and clothes, making them look like a pair of drowned rats. The text in my vision was ecstatic. "Ha ha, they deserve it. This is beautiful. That's karma for you. Let's see them act high and mighty now." Just then a taxi pulled up. Sophie jumped out, carrying several containers of takeout food. She froze when she saw the scene, then rushed over, helping Diana to her feet before trying to pull Caleb up. "Caleb, Mrs. Vance, what happened? Get up!" Seeing Sophie was like seeing a savior. Diana grabbed her arm. "Sophie, you're here. You have to go beg Ethan. Ask him to let us go. We know we were wrong. We truly do." Caleb looked up, a flicker of light appearing in his vacant eyes. Sophie's face went white. I could only imagine the humiliation and conflict tearing her apart. I didn't watch any longer. I rolled up the window and drove away. It was time for this drama to reach its final act. The next day, the Vance Corporation officially declared bankruptcy. The business giant, which had stood for nearly a century in New York, had crumbled in less than a week. The news sent shockwaves through the city. I, the man at the center of the storm, remained perfectly calm. As a primary creditor, I attended the bankruptcy liquidation meeting. I saw Sophie there. She was attending as Donovan Vance's proxy, as he was now unable to speak or move after his stroke. She looked exhausted and haggard, but she was still trying to fight for the last scraps for the Vance family. "I object to Sinclair Corp's debt for equity swap proposal." She stood up, her voice trembling slightly with nerves. "This proposal severely undervalues the Vance brand and its fixed assets. This is blatant robbery." Everyone in the conference room turned to look at her with a mixture of pity, amusement, and morbid curiosity. I sat at the head of the table, my fingers steepled, my face a mask. "Miss Miller," I began, and the room fell silent. "First, you need to understand something. The Vance brand no longer has any value. A company mired in fraud, scandal, and disease has a brand that is worth less than nothing. Second, regarding the fixed assets, I nodded to my legal team. They immediately produced a stack of thick reports and distributed them to every creditor. This is our latest appraisal of all Vance-owned land, properties, and equipment. Due to years of mismanagement, most of the equipment is severely outdated, and many properties are involved in zoning violations or ownership disputes. Their actual value is at least 70% less than what's on the books. The proposal I've made is frankly the most generous offer on the table given our family's past relationship. My words were like a bucket of ice water extinguishing Sophie's last glimmer of hope. She stared at the report in her hands, every number a knife twisting in her gut. She collapsed in her chair, her face ashen. "Why?" she whispered, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "Why are you being so cruel?" "Cruel?" I laughed. "Miss Miller, you seem to have forgotten. If my plan hadn't worked, it would be the Sinclair family sitting here right now, being carved up like a piece of meat. Business is war. It's kill or be killed. Your childish fairy tale logic has no place here." The meeting concluded. My proposal was approved by an overwhelming majority. Sinclair Corp had officially acquired the restructured new Vance for pennies on the dollar. As I left the conference room, Sophie was waiting for me at the end of the hall. "Ethan," she called out, her voice trembling, "can I ask you for one last thing?" I stopped but didn't turn around. The old Vance estate, it was Caleb's grandparents' home. It means everything to him. I know it's been seized for auction. Could you buy it and give it back to him? It's the only thing he has left." Her voice was frail, pleading. The text in my vision was dripping with contempt. Even now she's still thinking about him. Truly touching. Where does she get the nerve to ask for anything? I turned around and looked at her tear-streaked face. "All right," I nodded. A flicker of hope ignited in Sophie's eyes. "Really?" "Of course," I said with a vicious smile. "But I have two conditions. First, have Caleb Vance come to the front gate of my house, kneel, and tell my security cameras in detail exactly how he planned to report my father and ruin my family. And second, I walked up to her and leaned in, my voice a whisper only she could hear. Have your mother pay a visit to my mother. I want her to apologize for the years she shamelessly used her so-called debt of gratitude to pressure me into marrying her cheating, backstabbing daughter. Do those two things, and the house is yours." Sophie's body began to tremble violently. She looked at me with terror and despair. She knew my conditions were worse than death. It was the ultimate spiritual degradation for her, her mother, and Caleb Vance. "Ethan," her lips quivered, "you're a monster." "Thank you for the compliment." I turned and walked away. "I'll be waiting for your answer." I thought Sophie and Caleb would choose to let it go. After all, my conditions were designed to strip them of the only thing they had left, their dignity. I was wrong. 3 days later, Caleb Vance showed up. He was at the main gate of my estate, supported by Sophie. He was painfully thin, his face a ghostly gray, his eyes empty. He looked like a marionette that might fall apart at any moment. When he saw me walk out of the house, his body went rigid. A flash of hatred and humiliation crossed his face before being replaced by a dead emptiness. "Go on," I said, leaning against the doorframe, watching them with detached amusement. Sophie bit her lip and gave him a little push. Caleb's knees buckled and he collapsed onto the cold marble with a thud. The golden boy of New York, the man who had always looked down on me, was now kneeling at my feet like a dog. The text in my vision scrolled furiously with a single word. "Yes," he started, his voice a dry rasp. "I back at the hospital." Every word was a monumental effort. "I contacted Deputy Commissioner Reynolds at the IRS. He's a distant relative of my father's. I gave him some information my father had about Sinclair Corp's tax vulnerabilities. I wanted to ruin you. I wanted your father to go to prison." He spoke in broken fragments, his head sinking lower and lower until it seemed he wanted to bury it in the ground. Sophie stood beside him, covering her mouth, crying silently. I listened without expression. I already knew all of this. Of course, my own sources had confirmed it weeks ago, but hearing him confess it himself on his knees was a different kind of satisfaction. It was the feeling of grinding an enemy's pride into dust beneath your heel. When he finished, he seemed to be completely drained, slumping to the ground. "Is that enough?" Sophie asked, her eyes red. "We did what you asked." "The house?" "Not so fast." I cut her off. "There's still one more condition." Sophie's face went white. I took out my phone, called my mother, and put it on speaker. "Mom, has Mrs. Miller arrived?" My mother's voice on the other end was strained. "She has. She's waiting in the living room." "Excellent." I hung up and looked at Sophie. "Let's go, Miss Miller. It's time for you to witness your mother's sincere apology." I led Sophie into the living room. Her mother, the woman who had always lorded her family's favor over mine, who always acted like a creditor, was perched nervously on the edge of the sofa. She shot to her feet when we entered. My mother sat in the armchair opposite her face like stone. "Mrs. Miller," my mother began, "to what do we owe the pleasure of your visit?" Sophie's mother's face turned beet red. She glanced at her daughter, then at my mother, her lips trembling. Finally, as if making a terrible decision, she dropped to her knees. "Mrs. Sinclair, I am so sorry. I've wronged you and your family." As she spoke, she began to slap her own face. Smack, smack, smack. Each one was loud and sharp. "I'm shameless. I'm greedy. I used an old favor to try and trap your son. I failed as a mother. I raised a disloyal, shameless daughter like Sophie and let her hurt Ethan. I'm a terrible person. I deserve to die. I'm begging you. Please have mercy on us." She wailed and cursed herself, the slaps getting harder and harder. Sophie stood frozen, watching her mother humiliate herself so completely for a piece of property. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She let out a sharp scream and fainted. The living room descended into chaos. I watched it all, feeling nothing. You reap what you sow. You brought this all upon yourselves. After that final drama, I kept my word. I had my team process the deed for the old Vance estate. But the name I put on it wasn't Caleb's. It was Sophie's. When I had the deed delivered, I included a small card. It read, "Congratulations, Miss Miller. You traded your mother's and your lover's dignity for this house. I hope you sleep well at night." I have no idea what her reaction was. All I know is that after that day, she and her new broken family vanished from New York City. It was as if they had never existed. My world was finally quiet. A year later, Sinclair Corp completed the full integration and optimization of the former Vance assets. I personally oversaw the restructuring, cutting all unprofitable and dubious ventures and keeping only the core real estate and finance divisions. The new Sinclair. Really, Sinclair Capital became the twin engines of our corporate empire. The market value of Sinclair Corp tripled in a year, cementing our position as the undisputed leader in the city's business world. My father officially retired, and he and my mother began traveling the world. As he put it, his greatest achievement wasn't founding Sinclair Corp, but having a son who had so thoroughly surpassed him. I stood in the office that once belonged to Donovan Vance, now mine, looking down at the sprawling city lights below. The translucent text box that had been my companion for a year began to flicker. Warning, Corplo severely damaged. World stability below 1%. Initiating forced reset. Reset failed. Logic error. Mail underscore, lead underscore 2. Escape. Contract. Oh. The jumbled text flashed erratically before fizzing out like a burnt-out light bulb. The world in front of me was crystal clear. I raised an eyebrow, a little disappointed. That's it. No farewell ceremony, no grand prize. It just fried itself. I was expecting a more dramatic exit. Turns out it was just a server crash. Oh well, it was just a tutorial. Anyway, it had no right to share in my victory. The intercom on my desk buzzed. It was Leo. "Mr. Sinclair, a Miss Maya Rodas is here. She says she has something extremely important to discuss with you." Maya Rodas, that masterclass manipulator. I'd almost forgotten about her. "Send her up." A few minutes later, Maya sashayed in, poured into a tight fire engine red dress. She was as stunning as ever, but now there was a hardness in her eyes, a calculating edge. "Mr. Sinclair, it's been too long. You're even more magnetic than I remember," she said, sitting across from my desk and crossing her legs, revealing a long stretch of thigh. "What do you want?" I wasn't in the mood for games. "I'm here to propose a partnership." She pulled a flash drive from her Hermes bag. On here is all the original evidence of Donovan Vance's crimes over the years. Bribing officials, insider trading, everything. I thought you might be interested. I looked at the flash drive and smiled. And your price? I don't want money, Maya said, her eyes gleaming with ambition. I want 10% of the new Sinclair Corp, and I want to be your woman. She stood up and walked around the desk, intending to sit on my lap. Mr. Sinclair, I was blind to choose a loser like Caleb Vance. I see clearly now. You're the real king. Together we could build an even bigger empire. Her hand reached for my face. I leaned back in my chair, avoiding her touch. Miss Rhodes, I said, looking at her confident face, my smile turning to ice. Have you made a mistake? This so-called evidence of yours, that was the ammunition I used to destroy the Vance family a year ago. You're trying to bargain with me using expired goods. Maya's smile froze on her face. As for you, I looked her up and down, my disdain unconcealed. Do you really think a man who dines on filet mignon would have any interest in scraps from the gutter? You're not even worthy of polishing my shoes. I pressed the intercom button. Security, please escort this young lady out. And from now on, no one named Maya Rhodes, or any woman who even resembles her, is to be allowed within 100 feet of Sinclair Tower. I find her presence unsanitary. Maya Rhodes was practically dragged out by security. Her beautiful face was twisted in a mask of pure humiliation, a stream of curses pouring from her lips. So much for the masterclass manipulator. I watched her go as if observing a tedious farce. Some people just never learn their place. With all the trash finally taken out, my life returned to its proper course. My work became my sole focus. Under my leadership, the Sinclair empire expanded relentlessly, moving beyond real estate and finance into technology, entertainment, and renewable energy. By the time I was 30, 5 years later, Sinclair Corp had grown from a New York powerhouse into a global conglomerate with immense influence. My name was a regular feature on the covers of major financial magazines. They called me the god of Wall Street, the capital crocodile, a legend who can't be replicated. But I knew the truth. I was just an ordinary man who had taken back the life that was supposed to be his. I never dated or married. Countless socialites, heiresses, and celebrities tried to get close to me, but I kept them all at a distance. After experiencing women like Sophie and Maya, I had lost all interest in the concept of love. Wasn't building an empire more satisfying than building a relationship? For my 30th birthday, I gave myself a long overdue vacation and flew to the Maldives alone. I booked an entire private island, lay on the white sand beach, sipped chilled champagne, and reveled in the absolute silence. Inevitably, my assistant Chris's satellite phone rang. Mr. Sinclair, happy birthday! Chris's voice was buzzing with excitement. I have great news. That sci-fi film project we invested in 3 years ago, Stellar Odyssey, it just won the Oscar for Best Picture. Oh, was all I said. That was the project everyone had advised me to drop, calling the genre niche and a guaranteed flop. I was the only one who believed in it, signing off on the $300 million budget without a second thought. Also, the CEO of Universal wants to talk to you personally about acquiring our special effects studio. He said he's willing to raise his offer by another 10% if you can just get him a ticket to next week's premiere of Stellar Odyssey 2. Not interested, I said. Tell him if he wants to talk, he can fly to the Maldives and wait in line. Whether I see him or not will depend on how fast he can swim. Chris choked for a second. Then I heard him stifle a laugh. Yes, Mr. Sinclair, I'll go in for the poor man now. Wish him luck. I hung up and looked out at the endless turquoise sea, feeling a deep sense of peace. Just then, a local staff member approached, carrying a platter of fruit. He was thin with dark skin and kept his head bowed, afraid to meet my eyes. I glanced at him idly, but my gaze stopped. On his wrist was a familiar scar, a scar from many years ago when Caleb Vance had broken his arm, trying to show off on a motorcycle. I looked up, studying the man's face carefully. Beneath the tan and the weathered skin, I could still make out the faint outline of the face I once knew. It was him, Caleb Vance. He seemed to feel my stare. His body went rigid, and he lowered his head even further, the hand holding the platter beginning to tremble uncontrollably. I said nothing. I just watched him, I watched the man who had once been my superior, who had looked at me like I was an insect, now forced to serve me in the most humiliating way possible. He must hate me more than anything, and he must be terrified of me. After a long moment, I finally spoke. This fruit isn't fresh. My voice was quiet, but it hit him like a thunderclap. He dropped to his knees with a thud, pressing his forehead into the sand, his voice trembling with fear. I'm sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I'll go get you a new one right away. He scrambled to get up and flee. Stay. He froze, his body shaking like a leaf in the wind. I took a thick wad of cash from my wallet and tossed it on the sand in front of him. That's your tip. Take the money and get out of here. I don't want to see your face on this island again. Caleb stared at the money, then at me. His eyes were a storm of humiliation, resentment, and bitterness. But it all eventually dissolved into a numb resignation. He picked up the cash and limped away, disappearing from my sight. I didn't give him a second glance. I settled back in my lounge chair and closed my eyes. The sun was warm. The sea breeze was gentle. The pathetic side character. The tragic romance novel. My life doesn't need a script written by someone else. I write my own story.